Hello and welcome to 52 Miniatures. My name is Alex and this video is sponsored by Loot Studios. Today we're taking a look at fantasy tabletop game Malediction, a miniature tabletop skirmish game as well as a deck builder, a card game. I have played Malediction, I've painted some of the miniatures. I've also talked to the creators behind the game so that I can give you a summary and point out the highlights and what makes this game different. Another epic tale from the hobby realm. And so, what is Malediction?
Malediction is a skirmish-style miniatures game. This means less miniatures than an army-style game with miniatures that you move individually, rather than moving units. All on a gaming surface about 2 by 2 foot. Malediction is the first miniatures game I've encountered that comes playable on delivery. And that's because there's no miniatures in the box to paint or assemble. Instead, we've got a complete game in cardboard form. Miniatures and terrain represented by cardboard stand-ins, plus the deck and all accessories like dice, rulers and markers needed to play the game. The miniatures for the game come as 3D printable files, STLs to download and print on a 3D printer. So the idea is you can start playing the game the moment you get it and start working on the miniatures alongside the gaming rather than before the gaming. Each faction has its own box, and right now there's 4 factions for the game. The boxes I've got are pre-production samples, so please note that there may be discrepancies when it comes to design details. We're in the world of Agnar, where once great beings, let's call them gods, the Everlasting, shaped and tamed the world with mighty tools, everlasting relics. One day the Everlasting decided to go shape another world or something, or just take a bit of a break from driving all them relics around, and thus departed, leaving the relics in the hands of humans. Deities often seem rather irresponsible in retrospect, don't you think? Here kids, here's some toys, just don't press the big red button. Of course everyone started bickering about the purpose of gods and relics, and eventually there was war. And during a final stand, the siege of Osterrath. Well, I'll let Tiago, a Malediction loremaster, say it.
Someone at the end of that siege pressed a big red button that should not be pressed.
I get it, yeah.
That kind of broke things.
Yeah.
And it also turned out that the relics were kind of daisy-chained, resulting in, bang. Reality was shattered.
The world of Agnar is a broken world, and the Malediction is the scar that proves it.
Yeah.
It's not even a scar. It's kind of an open, festering wound. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
The Malediction. Somewhere you don't really want to go. Magic makes the rules. Reality is bent. All kinds of weird stuff. Only everyone realized that there's precious bits of exploded relic all over the place. We should go try and get it, even if it means turning into green pulp. And what we can call warbands are sent out to retrieve these relics, led by a seeker, your hero. There's the Order of the Shattered Throne, think classic, almost Arthurian fantasy aesthetic, but then add some Spanish Inquisition mindset. There's the Conclave of Spheres, think mages, but add greed and merchandising. There's Primal Blood, think destruction, blood and chaos, but also freedom fighters and free spirit. And finally, Legion of the Fallen, necromancers and undead, but think I miss Granny, and it would be better if she was immortal because then she could just bake those cookies forever. All factions have human elements as well as other races and creatures integrated. Now I was pretty eager to get playing and painting, curious about the miniatures and what the whole card deck thing is about. I reached out to new friends, Clara and Arvid. Arvid is a mean rules reader, and Clara enjoys both card and miniature games and painting, so a solid games testing team. We met up to open boxes, choose factions, check what we might need to prepare for a proper game. Setting up a walkthrough, like playing a first round or two to get a grasp of things. I'd already printed a handful of miniatures and terrain. I couldn't help myself, just to get a look. The miniatures are 42mm true scale. This means slightly larger than the 28 or 32 or 35 that is common in war games. True scale means, opposed to heroic scale, that the proportions of the sculpts are more true to life. No exaggerated hands, heads, or weapons. Unless it's very big weapons, of course. But on a whole, it makes things seem more real. The terrain is massive in some cases. I managed to print some of it on my resin printer, but this stuff is mainly designed to be printed on an FDM printer, I think. We kind of immediately agreed that it's fun to have all the cardboard minis to play with. We could test run the game right away, and that the best way forward after that would be to print out maybe our respective seekers and to have them painted for the first game. And to get some of the cool terrain printed and painted for a more immersive game. The fact that each faction has its own terrain adds depth to the gameplay and setting. It was pretty evident that I was going to be groveling in the dirt by the end of this, but as we know, the fun is in the game and not in the winning. Clara decided to go with the Primal Blood faction and the Mighty Thundersteps Seeker. And I went with the Shattered Throne, mainly because I kind of very much like the little priest miniature. Can't beat walking around with your own medieval light array, can you? I painted the priest during Christmas, starting from a brown base coat only because that was all I had at hand, but that worked out well as a base for the red. And then, step by step, built up colors, highlights, and shadows. I realized I should probably paint up more miniatures. And in a different way, using different techniques to show some of the variety in the miniatures, but also how they take different types of paint, like contrast-style paints. And I might as well throw in some potential tips into the bag as well. I printed my Seeker, the vengeful Sigrith, joined by some of the minis I liked the look of. The Malediction website is a good place to look at the miniatures and the cards and read the lore and stories, by the way. Now I wanted to start all these with a type of zenithal prime. That means priming with a dark primer to overbrush or overspray with something bright from up top. It can be done with rattle can, airbrush, or even brushed on, and it gives the miniature a look like it's lit by a cloudy sky or something. Normally done with a white over a black base. However, this time I did some additional shenanigans. I sprayed some teal and purple on the black prime with my airbrush, and then moved on to a careful dry brush of white with a large makeup brush. Dry brushing is essentially adding paint to a brush, wiping most of it off on a piece of paper, and then brushing over the miniature. Paint mainly sticks to the raised areas. I'm trying to make sure the brush and paint does not get completely dry by adding moisture to the brush and the paper. This is to avoid a build-up of chalky paint, but can be a little trickier to get the hang of. I mainly brush from up, moving down, to mimic the light from an imaginary sky. The point of all this is to get some excitement happening when adding transparent paint, like contrast paints. The recesses will get extra dark and also get a bit of a shift in color because of the teal and purple. Here's two minis with only the dry brushed base. It definitely brings out the detail, shows off the sculpt, and not only does this give more excitement to transparent paints, I just find it helps visualize all the bits for a more pleasant paint experience. Now, adding a contrast paint to this is pretty straightforward. But if you want to get another step of excitement happening as well, it's possible to add several paints on the miniature and mix while the paint is still wet, called wet blending. I'm using a green and a sort of burgundy. The result is a brownish shade where the paint mixes. This mini from the Conclave of Spheres suits this kind of painting real well. Finishing up with something visible from afar, pretty important I think for things that are meant for gaming, an orange or a red, anything that draws an eye. And we've got a playable miniature efficiently. I did something similar on this husk. A husk is sort of an objective marker. I'll explain more when we start playing the game. But here I also used a contrast medium or speed paint medium. It's like the contrast paint without color. I used it to thin the paints. Because of the previous dry brush work, this ends up looking very ghostly. Again, efficient. Yet for what it is, really works on the table. Using contrast paints can of course be the base for more detailed work, like I will now be doing on my hero model. I often take my time painting miniatures, and I think this is where the idea of having cardboard stand-ins for your miniatures is a bonus, because it won't really matter how long I spend painting, I can still play the game. I'll let the first bit of painting my Seeker be a bit self-explanatory while I talk a little more about the factions. Sigrid here is from the Order of the Shattered Throne. They're a more traditional knights and such, a slightly defensive faction, a lot of armor and healing spells.
They are very militaristic, very religious. They are really intent of cleansing the continent of corruption, and that doesn't just mean the Malediction. It means anyone who stands in their way of creating a better world for everyone else who's left.
Yep.
The opposite, pretty much, of the Order is Primal Blood that Clara is playing. It's aggressive, moving fast, dealing a lot more damage.
Because the Primal Blood is definitely the most populous faction in the continent. They are the most aggressive and one of the most physically and magically powerful. Their defenses are not that high, but they don't care, because as long as if they kill their enemies fast enough, they are not going to need to defend themselves, right?
The conclave of spheres, the magicians, are a bit varied, but there's a focus of ranged attacks and movement. You're not a proper wizard without a teleportation spell, right?
There's a lot of internal struggle because they are always trying to, there's a bit of corporate espionage going on. They're trying to steal knowledge from each other. But one of the things that they do is that funding expeditions into the Malediction to recover that ancient, lost magical knowledge, bring it back, study it, reverse engineer it, and then sell it to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
Even though there's a few very powerful units, the Legion of the Damned have the possibility of being a bit more of a horde faction. There's plenty of dead people about. As well as sporting the sort of life-based spells, sacrifice and such.
Some of the most powerful units in the game, I believe, are in the Legion, but their bread and butter is going to be to summon a bunch of low-level and fairly weak creatures, create a big swarm, and then use their spells and abilities to gain more actions with those units. So and make those units more powerful.
So there's something for everyone, really. One does not have to play different factions. You can field Order versus Order, but it might feel a little less varied, you know. The gameplay is typically 1 versus 1, but there's also a 2 versus 2 mode that I've not really had the time to check out. Any details you're interested in can simply be looked up. The basic rules are free to download on the Malediction website. And I think there's some free sample minis there to download as well. Now back to Sigrid. I've covered all different sections with a suitable contrast style paint. I can then go in and work on some details with regular paints, working on faces and overall highlights. I'm trying to be selective. There's a lot of areas I can just leave because of the contrast paint workflow, but paying attention to something like a face will give the whole mini a lot more painterly look. I think one of the biggest things, something I'm playing around with, is how basic can I keep my color scheme. I find the simple look rewarding, I don't know why. But this mini features pretty much only 2 colors, the red armor and the blue base, and the rest is grays and browns. I liked how everything looked when done, but I was missing a little bit of dramatics, so I went in with a bit of airbrush. A simple spray from underneath of pale turquoise and then a blue turquoise ink. It gives a sort of reflection vibe from the imagined water around the miniature. I forget I can do these kind of things with the airbrush. It's so simple, yet pretty effective. Finally, I carefully added a dark grey enamel wash to some of the shaded areas of the red armor, giving it a bit more of a grim look. Enamel washes are fun. They flow out very naturally, but can also be cleaned up a little afterwards with a Q-tip dipped in thinner, for example. Like using an eraser, removing mistakes and doing general cleanup to bring back some of the red. The final step is a bit of dust enamel pigments on the base. I may be regretting this step, not sure. It was kind of nice without, but there we are. I think one of the coolest things with this mini is the shield. Also, I kind of adore the I don't give a rat's behind about the fact that you fell in the water, I'm busy surveying the battlefield look to my lady hero. Arvid helped me out at work, the great local friendly game store, Alpha Spel, to print out one of the largest pieces of the Primal Blood terrain on an FDM printer. Thanks Arvid and Alpha Spel. This is a great piece of terrain. So the story is that during that great siege before the Malediction, giants were sort of used like siege engines or something. Now they're stuck in some kind of magical limbo, just forever leaking toxic blood all over the place.
People were able to create them and use them as weapons of war. And they are living creatures, right? They were living creatures. But they are without their masters now and without a means of being controlled. So they just kind of become part of the terrain, bleeding eternally.
I definitely want to paint this up as well as some of the order terrain I printed in resin. So I decided on a pale bone-colored primer for everything. It should work as the base for both perpetually dying giants and ruined stone buildings. I'm attacking these two different types of terrain with two different methods. The stone ruins are getting a layer of dark grey contrast paint thin with some medium. The overall grey tone is a classic approach, but don't forget, stone can be any colour, especially in the Malediction. These pieces are sort of being ripped apart by magic or something. I give these a traditional blue magic look. I think pink would have been very nice as well. And I mean, as I want to start gaming with these now approach, we could be done. But I'm going to give them more attention. I quite like sponging on paint for large plastic pieces like this. The approach is to stamp on the paint using a piece of sponge. Could be kitchen sponge or packaging sponge or whatever. This is from a cheap paint supply store, I think. I dip the sponge in paint, here's a grey slightly brighter than my base colour, and work on the edges and raised areas. If there's too much paint on the sponge, I remove some on a tissue, so that the end result of stippling with the sponge is something textured looking and not just blobs of wet paint. Above this I can then go in with a dry brush of even brighter grey using that large makeup brush again. This just boosts the little details on the sculpt. I can use these techniques because the print is so very fine. A rougher FDM print like the big giant and the result can be less satisfactory. The contrast paint can settle in the recess of layer lines and the dry brush can pick up the layer lines even further. Anyway, the ruins are looking great. I stippled on some green moss as well, looking good. I'm again realizing I have an airbrush. I keep putting it away because I don't want to scare away viewers who don't have access to one. But I figure as long as I show multiple options of workflows, then it's a little silly not to use in instances like this. Because honestly, having an airbrush when working on large pieces like this is a lot of fun. I boost the green with a green ink, as well as boost the magic effect, first by spraying on a white that I then tint with the original contrast paint, but shot through the airbrush. And finally, some enamel liquid pigments to add some dust and dirt. It's going to be fun having these on the table. The terrain is not only good looks, they affect what you can see, like cover, gives you something to hide behind, as well as affect units in different ways, some harmful and some positive. They can be used in gameplay creatively. And finally, the big fellow. Because of the FDM layer line thing I talked about, I decided to just use the airbrush for this. Pretty fun work because of its size. Stepping back and having these kind of features on a table is a treat. And again, I'll show my process, but at the same time talk about other matters. We're getting close to game time, and I'd like to talk about the whole card thing before we start. Each faction comes with a deck of cards. There is a set deck as well as extra cards. We start with a set deck for gameplay, but in the future, one can use the extra cards to alter and shape a more personal deck. The deck is a little like the roster containing the little army you will play. The cards in the deck can be unit cards, items, spells, stuff like that. A unit card represents one miniature or one cardboard stand-in. In gameplay, we shuffle the deck and start by taking the top 7 cards. This will be the first units we can deploy or spells we can cast and so on. To me, this is the big thing about this game. It's different and it's fun. As I never know what the first 7 cards will be means every game is different. In round 3, will I be able to reinforce my hero with a fresh unit? Or can I cast a great spell? Only the cards know. Chance-driven play is for me so much what gaming is about. As the cards representing units hold all their stats like movement range, attack, defense and so on, and it's placed on the table when the unit is in play, well that means easy reference access for both me and my opponent, speeding up the fact side of gameplay as well as make the information about all units instantly and equally available to all players. Now with the terrain, as you can see, with some layers of paint on, and this is a pretty gruesome piece of terrain. Nightmarish. And on that note, time to play a game. Clara and Arvid are back. Clara has painted the Great Thunder Steps Seeker. Very cool and grim looking. That club is larger than my hero, pretty much. I unfortunately forgot to give her the base, so I'm to blame for the unpainted base, by the way. She also painted another gory husk and a totem, another great model. We actually never got to play with the totem, but it's great to see it with some paint on. And it's nice to see all that painted plastic on the table, and fun to have my two kind of co-hosts back. Oh, and my son joined in as well, as mostly will be seen by the steady reduction of candy out of the candy bowl. We played a full game, but I'm not going to do a battle report. Instead, I'll highlight some of the mechanics from the game that I, Clara and Arvid think are interesting. We start at opposite corners of the board and start by an alternate placing of the terrain, and then place some husks. These are like objective markers. Each husk contains a relic, and that's what we're here for. So we need to reach a husk and interact with it to retrieve a relic. We can then move on and have a look at our top 7 cards drawn from the deck and start planning a strategy. Or some might do that, I just look at the pretty pictures. A fun start thing is we bid for who gets to go first. The different cards in the deck hold a different value. A hero will have a higher value than a foot soldier, for example. To get to go first, we bid with a card from our hand that will then be discarded. Highest value wins. But you lose the card. That's fun. Will you sacrifice something valuable to get to go first? This is repeated every round. The game is based on spending Echo to buy in units on the table or to do magic spells. The Echo is boosted every round, and so does one's deck of cards. So we start by buying in and placing units. After that initial deployment, there is a system of alternate activations. That means I do something with a unit, and then Clara does something. So we're constantly going back and forth, an active and engaging gameplay. The game builds up, from a few miniatures on the table at first to more and more during the course of the game. Retrieving a relic and smiting opponents is rewarded with mastery points, and the winner of the game is the one who reached a before-determined number of mastery points. And while we keep playing the game, I'll list some noticeable points. The game is fast and fast-paced. We played a game in about 2 hours, and that's the very first game. I think you can probably do it in 1 hour when used to the rules. We're rolling D20s. My experience with these dice is that gameplay can be more swingy and exciting than when using D6 dice. A unit will do a little damage even if it misses an attack. It makes sense to me. When in a fight, you're in a fight, you'll get hurt. So units go down rather quickly in the grand scheme of things. It's gruesome out there in the Malediction. I think the maximum number of units in a deck is about 15. On the table, we never had more than 4 or 5 each, admittedly on one of the smaller game settings. This game can be played on a 2x2 foot up to a 3x3 foot. Regardless, this gives you an idea of how many miniatures you might need to paint. And yeah, the game really does build up. More points to spend are given each consecutive round, so by round 4 there is a lot of action happening. I might even call it chaotic. A proper skirmish. All in all, it's a very approachable and interactive game. It feels like a game to play with friends for the fun and sometimes very surprising actions that take place because of the card-based gameplay. Again, seeing all the stats right there in front of you on the cards, not having to look in books, great. I lost. In the middle of a brilliant move based on a cool mini I just picked up from my deck, Clara played some brilliant magic from a card she just picked up from her deck. Or did she smash my head in with that huge club? I can't remember now, so probably the later. But the game was fun, regardless, and I can see how one could play a few of these games in an evening. In conclusion, it's exciting to see a game like Malediction. It can allure people who play deck builders, card gamers who've been looking into miniatures, as well as board gamers who are used to opening a box and start playing a game right away. And in that case, welcome to this great hobby. For me, as I said, the card thing is right up my alley. I've played a few different miniatures games by now, and this is to me an original concept. The art on the cards is great, in combination with good-looking miniatures and original terrain, all mixed to create a swift game full of surprises. Welcome to the Malediction. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please check out the other videos in this What Is series. Check out the Malediction Kickstarter link below. And please like and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.